Hey everybody, welcome to Mammoth Interactive's YouTube channel. First of all, I want to thank you for watching this video. And remember that this channel doesn't do Patreon. Instead, we sell our digital courses down below. And every single dollar that we get from the products you buy below goes into making more content. The best way to help out this channel and Mammoth Interactive is to subscribe to Mammoth Interactive's huge library of content. Get thousands of hours and hundreds of courses for a low price down below. We have a monthly option and a yearly option. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the video.
Welcome to this tutorial of Node.js by Mammoth Interactive. In this tutorial, we'll begin from the complete basics of Node, and we'll build upon that by discussing what Node really is and how it works. And we'll move on to the more advanced topics. We'll also have a course project in which we will create a real-time chat application. And we'll learn some of the more advanced modules of this course as we work on that project. I hope this course provides you with the stepping stones required to completing your journey to becoming a back-end developer. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you soon. Hi, my name is Maz and I work with Mammoth Interactive, and I'll be your instructor for this Node.js tutorial. I've been working with Node.js and other JavaScript front-end and back-end programming for over 2 years. And let me tell you that it's one of the easiest things to get started with as a beginner, and really easy to turn into actual professional work. Throughout this course, I hope I'm able to help you understand the basics and complexities of Node.js to help you progress into back-end development. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the tutorial. Let's answer all the questions on your mind before starting this tutorial. There must be one specific question, which is why Node? Well, the reason for starting to learn Node is JavaScript is used throughout web development, on the front end and on the back end, so creating applications that are based completely on one language, JavaScript, would make it so much simpler. And that means if you work with Node on the back end, and something like Angular on the front end, you could easily make your entire web application based on just one language. There are also countless NPM packages. We'll talk about those during the course. These are basically packages with lots of pre-packaged functionality that you can use throughout your Node.js programs as utilities to make things a lot easier for you. Node is also extremely fast and responsive. That should be enough reasons for you to want to start learning Node and make this tutorial. Thank you for watching this video. Our goal in this tutorial is to learn Node.js as a back-end development framework and to be able to create APIs which we can use in applications such as the real-time messenger app. We'll also be creating this messenger app throughout this course to strengthen our concepts in Node.js. In this application, we will provide functionality to create usernames and to join rooms, with multiple users joining the same room being able to chat with each other. And these messages will only be transmitted to users in those rooms. So if Barry were to send a message here, only Dave would be able to see it because he's in the same room. We'll also be able to send geolocation messages. Join me for this tutorial to learn more about Node.js and be able to create many applications such as this one all by yourself. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope I'll see you soon. Before starting this tutorial, there are a few course requirements. You should know how to program in JavaScript, so you should have a basic idea of the syntax and the way that JavaScript code is written. You should also have some basic knowledge of ESX or ACMA script 600. You should know how a web application basically works and what a back-end and the front-end are. And that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching this video. In this video, we'll talk about what we'll learn in this section. So we'll start off with installing Node.js and Visual Code. We'll talk about what Node is and how it really works, and we'll also build our first Node.js script. In the next video, we'll start our installations. Welcome back. In this video, we'll be installing Node.js and Visual Code as our code editor. I'd suggest using Visual Code because throughout this course I'll be using some tricks that might make redundant code a lot easier. So let's get started then. First off, I want you to install Node.js. So if you don't have Node installed, head up to nodejs.org to download the latest recommended stable version. So what we get is a package, and we run it, and it's just an installation. To select Next, agree to the terms, Next. Just keep going Next, just keep going Next, and install, and it's all done. What I want you to do next is open Command Prompt and type node -- version. This will show you that Node is installed and the current version installed on your operating system. Next, I want you to install Visual Studio Code. Let's head over to their website, visualstudio.com, and download it for Windows or Mac, whatever you're using. Now, Visual Studio is a light and powerful editor, and you can use any others like Sublime or Atom, but I prefer Visual Code myself, so click Download. So once that's downloaded, let's open up the file, accept the terms, click Next, Install, and with that we're done with installations. In the next video, we'll talk about what Node.js really is and how it works. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you soon. Welcome back. In this video, we'll talk about what Node really is. To understand that, we need to understand how JavaScript really runs inside the browser. So inside every browser there's embedded a JavaScript engine, such as the Weird engine in Chrome, the Chakra engine in Internet Explorer, or the Spider Monkey engine in Firefox. These are responsible for executing the JavaScript code that is handed to them. Now that brings us back to our question, what is Node? So the creators of Node came up with a brilliant idea. Why not make JavaScript code executable outside the browser? So the developers basically created a C++ program, took the Chrome V8 engine and embedded it inside that C++ program, and then called it Node. Put simply, Node.js is a runtime environment for executing JavaScript code outside of a browser, giving us the ability to program back-end services, also called APIs, or application programming interfaces. So that's our basic of what Node really is. In the next video, we'll talk about building our first Node.js script. Welcome back. In this video, we'll code and run our first Node.js script, so let's get started with that. First, I want you to open your terminal and type make directory. First script. Next, navigate to the directory, type cd first. Next, open this directory in Visual Code. For that we can just type code, period. Inside Visual Code, I want you to create a file. We'll call it app.js. Now this is like any normal JavaScript file, and we'll type normal JavaScript code inside us. So first off, let's define a function. Let's call it hello world. We'll pass a parameter called message. Inside the function, we'll just console.log message. Now we'll call this function hello world, and we'll pass a parameter. We'll say hello world. We'll save this. Now we'll open our terminal. Back in our terminal, we'll type node and pass the file as an argument. Now what this really does is it passes the file to the Chromium engine embedded inside Node, which in itself is nothing more than a C++ program. So we'll click enter and we'll see the string being displayed on a console. And that's all for this section. In the next video, we'll summarize this section and move on to the next section. Thank you for watching. Welcome back. In this section, we set up our Node environment, we installed VS Code, and we learned the basics of Node and what it really is. We also ran a very simple Node script to peek into it. As a challenge to get used to coding with JavaScript in the Node environment, Try creating a Node app that can console log positive if variable is true, or negative if the variable is false. You will declare the variable by yourself and check it for both possible outcomes. That's all for this section. In the next section, we'll go into a little more detail of Node. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you soon. Welcome back. In this section, we're going to go over the Node.js module system. We're going to learn how to import Node core modules, how to import and export your own modules, importing NPM modules, and how to install and use them. We'll also learn about global NPM modules and nodemon. In the next video, we'll start with a general overview of the Node module system. Thank you for watching this video. Welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about the Node module system. In every modern programming language, we divide our code into different files to organize our code. We can also include pre-built libraries into our code to benefit from their functionalities. In Node, the module system does exactly that. Every file in our node can be a module in our application. We can also include predefined modules, available open source, into our application to benefit from functionality provided in each Node module. Each Node module has its own context so that it doesn't pollute the global scope and lead to potential overwriting of functions or variables. For instance, if we'd created the same variable in two different places, it could potentially override one instance of that variable. So that's all about the basics of what the Node module system is. In the next video, we're going to go over how you can import some Node.js core modules. Thank you for watching this video. In this video, we're going to talk about Node.js core modules. We'll also import them into our app and try using some of the functionalities provided by them. So in Node, we have a few very important modules built into it. With these modules, we can work with files, operating systems within a network, and so on. Let's go to node.js.org, then go to docs. On the left side, let's select the current stable version, which is 0.18.4 at the moment, where it could be different when you're watching this video. Here you can see all the Node modules. Now, although some of these items in this list, such as console, are just global objects, for now, we'll try using the OS module. So inside, you can see functions such as freemem, which shows you the current free memory of the system, totalmem, which shows you the total memory of the system, uptime, which tells you the uptime of the system, and user info, which can tell you information about the current user of the system. Now let's get into it. Let's open Visual Code. So the method of including a Node core module into your Node app is that you type require, and inside that you pass the name of that module. The one we'll be using is OS. Now what we'll do is we'll pass this into a variable. We'll call it const, always equals require. Now we can use this variable name to reference the functions being provided by the core module. So once we've imported overs, let's try using some of its functionality. So we'll console log a few things. We'll use .freemem. Let's just copy this. And we'll also try always.total. Now, these are two of the functions that we saw a few moments ago on the documentation. So now let's try running this up. We'll go to our terminal. In there, let's just run app.js. As you can see, it console logs both our resources, our free memory, and our total memory in this current system. One of the core concepts in Node is events. In fact, a lot of Node's core functionality is based on events. Now, you're probably wondering, what is an event in Node? Well, it's nothing more than a signal. In Node, many modules signal events based on their functionality. For example, if you were to use an HTTP module to listen On a board to create a server, every request it gets will register an event. So there's this core module called Events inside Node. That's why using this module, let's open the Node documentation again. And in this, let's find events. So in this module, we have one class called Event Emitter. Let's see how we can work with this. Back in Visual Code. Let's remove this code, and we'll type required event. And we'll pass this into a variable called event emitter. Note the naming convention. The first alphabet of event and emitter are both capital. That signifies that this is not a module or an object or a variable. It's a class. Next, we'll use this class to create an object. We'll call it fonts, and jmeter is equal to new event emitter. So what we can do next is basically register an event. So we write emitter.emit. It will just emit an emitted message. Now if we run this code, it won't really do anything, so let's try doing that. So back in our terminal, type node, our purchase, and as you can see, it did nothing. That's because we're just registering an event, and it's not console logging anywhere. Nothing is really happening, so we'll try listening for that. Back in Visual Code, we'll create an event listener. We'll type emitter.addListener. Now this takes two arguments. The first one is the message that was emitted. And the next one is a callback function, or an actual listener. So we'll pass function. In that, we'll just console.log, called the message. So if you run this code now, we'll see that when the event is emitted, the listener listens to that event and console logs that message. Let's go back to the terminal and again type Node.js. And as you can see, the listener has console logged the message. So you'll be using this module often when programming with Node. That's all for this section. In the next video, we'll talk about how to import and export your own Node modules. Thank you for watching this video. Welcome back. In this video, we'll go over creating our own Node modules and importing and exporting them. So let's get started with that. First, let's open Visual Code. We can create a new file here and call it mathfunctions. So mathfunctions.js. Inside this, let's create some functions. We'll start off function add. It takes two arguments, x and y. And so we just return x plus y. Let's copy paste this and create a few more functions. We just change these to subtract, divide, and multiply. We'll also change the operators, minus, divide, and multiply. So what we're going to do now is export this file as a module.experts.node is equal to at What we're doing here is exporting the art function by the name art. Now note that we could use any other variable instead of this, our name here. This gives us the ability to make using a module simpler outside the file and hide any complexities and naming conventions of the module itself. So I'll just copy this entire thing 4 times. And we'll make these subtract, multiply, and divide. It also copy these head. And with that, we've exported all 4 of these from this module. What this does is makes all these functions that work first private to just this module global scope so that they can be accessed from any other .js file. Now what we're going to do is go into our app.js and we'll import that file using the require statement. And require will pass the relative path to that file. As you can notice, the period and /, they weren't used when we were importing Node core modules. That's because Node recognizes its core modules, but for our own files, we have to pass the relative path according to whatever it is. We'll pass this into a variable called cause math functions. Now we can use any of these functions. We could do something like console.log, not functions, .ard, and we can pass to add5. We could also console log, that's functions, .subtract. We could do 6 and 3. Or console log math functions, or multiply 5 and 5. As you can see, we can access all the functions that were available in that module, as if they were global scope. We've successfully imported our module into this file. Now let's run our app and check if it works. So back in the terminal in our console, let's type node app.js. As you can see, all 3 of our functions are running correctly. So what we've learned in this video are the basics of creating your own Node modules. We've learned how to import them and how to export multiple functions that we've declared inside that file. That's all for this video. In the next video, we'll talk about NPM modules. Thank you for watching this video. Welcome back. In this video, we'll talk about NPM modules or packages. First off, I want to clarify what a package really is. It's nothing more than a collection of multiple modules. So inside it there will be multiple files. Many of those files could be a module. So with Node.js we had NPM, or the Node package manager installed with it. We can use this to add any of the countless open source packages available with NPM. Some of these packages, which we will also be using in this course, are, well, first off, nodemon. You can go to their documentation to understand what it is, but we'll actually go through this in more detail in a coming video. And the package that we'll be using is socket.io, and we'll be using that in the next section. So basically, there are thousands of packages online that you can use to make your job easier. They give you functionality that might be too complex for you to work out, but they've done it for you. And all you have to do is install them into your application and start using them. And it's really simple because they're all documented and easy to understand. So in the next video, we'll install and use an example NPM package or module. Thank you for watching this video and I'll see you soon. Welcome back. In this video, we'll install and use an NPM package. The package we're targeting first, this moment, let's go take a look at its documentation first. So we're at momentjs.com. Let's go to docs. Here, let's go to use a moment and select node.js. So we can see here the method of installing Moment into your package, and how to use it. So we'll open the terminal, and we're in the directory where our application is. We'll type npm install Moment, and once that's done, let's go into Visual Code. Inside Visual, let's import Moment, so we'll make a constant moment equal to require our Moment. So you'll notice that just like npm core modules, we don't have to pass a path over here because any installed package inside our application node will recognize it by itself. So you might have noticed that if I type this, it automatically suggests Moment. So now that we've imported this package, we can get started with using it. So first off, we need a variable that has a date in it. For that, we'll declare a variable called normal date. We'll set that equal to new date. Now let's go back to the documentation and take a look at how we're supposed to use Moment. So here let's go to display, and we can see that we can use these formats that are provided by Moment. We're going to use the today is day format for now. So back in VS Code, we'll type moment dot format, and we'll pass string that was required. Today is right. Today, in here, we'll pass the variable we created, so normal date, and we'll console log this whole thing. So console.log. Okay, now we can go to our terminal and run this code. So back in our terminal, let's type Node.JS. Now as you can see, it says today is Monday. That's exactly what it is today. We can also try out other formats for date, but I'll leave that up to you. After that, let's take a look at this other library, math.js. Now this package can perform complex mathematical calculations, such as derivatives and taking the log. You can also use it, for instance, to evaluate conversions between two different units, such as the example here, for centimeters to inches. We're actually going to try this one for now. So back in our terminal, npm install, which is okay, all done. Now let's head back to Visual Record and we'll import the materials library as requested. Required.js. As you can see here, so just had the name again. Now that we've imported that, let's get started with using it. So we'll console.log, and inside that we'll use maths.js, or I think I'll use the round function for now, and we'll pass 2.123456, and we'll just round it off to 3 decimal places. Let's see if that works. So type node.js. As you can see, it rounded off the number to 3 decimal places. So there you go, 2 very simple and useful NPM packages. I'd like for you to explore them and take a look at the documentation for more detail. That's all for this video. In the next video, we'll talk about global and local NPM packages. Thank you for watching this video. Welcome back. In this video, we'll talk about global and local NPM packages. In the last video, we used some NPM packages and we installed them in the directory of our application. What that does is download the source files of that package into our Node modules folder. And that is how you'll mostly be installing packages. However, there is another method. It's called global npm packages. The advantage of installing global npm packages is that it makes them available to all the applications we'll create on our system. Examples of packages that are globally installed or npm create React App, and a few more such as nodemon, which we'll talk about in the next video. So you're probably wondering how to install a package globally. Well, it's actually fairly simple. So, for instance, if you're installing a package, and npm install, and that's, let's say, moment, all you have to do is add -g before the name of that package, installs it globally on your system. So it becomes a part of every application that you use, and you can basically import it into that and use it there. This, however, brings up some issues. If, for instance, some application you're making isn't stable with a specific version of a package that you've installed, that might lead to some problems. So when you want version control inside your application, you always install the packages locally. Another thing that you'll notice is if you go back to Visual Code, now this is the application we've been working with from the start of this course. So all the packages that we've installed locally into it, they show up in the package locked on JSON file. Here you'll see every package that was installed, and the version, these are all actually packages that were installed with either Moment or the Matches library. And the Matches library is also right here. So this file keeps a track of all the packages you've installed and their current versions. So this does come in handy in bigger projects, or when you want to really control what versions you're using and how to really work around with these video packages. That's all for this video. The next video we'll learn about nodemon, which we'll be installing globally, and how to use it. Thank you for watching this video. Welcome back. In this video we're going to go over nodemon, how it'll help us in programming, and how to use it. First off, what does nodemon do? Well, I have the nodemon documentation opened up at nodemon.io. Here it says, nodemon reload automatically. That's pretty much what it does. Nodemon is a utility that will monitor for any changes in your source and automatically restart your server. So basically what it does is, if you've set up a server, you go into your source files, you make a change, you fix a bug or something, it'll restart your server on its own. You won't have to restart it from the terminal over and over every time you make a change to your code while testing it or building it up. So let's give it a try. To add nodemon to your application, we'll use npm. Let's open our terminal. You'll notice that I'm in our working directory. But I don't want to install nodemon only for this program. What I want to do is I want to install it globally. So the command to write is npm install -g nodemon. The G stands for global percentage. With that we've installed nodemon globally, so we can pretty much use it anywhere and configure it privately for an app if we need it inside it. We'll take a look at that too. So now let's open our Visual Code. Inside Visual Code, I'm firstly going to set up a server. Now if you don't understand this code exactly, that's fine. We'll go with it in more detail in the following sections, when we talk about socket programming and setting up our own server. Before we go any further, the first thing I really want you to do is to install an extension. Now this extension makes programming less of a hassle. Sometimes the extension we want to install is prettier. So this is the prettier core format. I have 300 installed on it, this target machine, yet, but let's go ahead and install that. After that, let's go into File, Preferences, Settings. And here let's search for mark on Save, and let's turn this on. Okay, now back to our code. Now what Prettier does is it formats your code automatically every time you hit Save, so you'll see that in a minute. We'll start off by importing HTTP to set up our server. So const HTTP is equal to require HTTP. Now let's set up our server SQL to http.server.listen board 1234. We're passing out a function. So that will just console.log. As you can see, Prettier just formatted that entire code for me, and that makes things a lot easier sometimes when you're writing long lines of code, and then you have to format them all by yourself, or you want to edit code and the brackets get confusing or something like that. So now we've set up our server, really basic, one large console, logs something every time it starts up, so now we have to run this server with nodemon. And to do that, it's simple. We go back to our terminal, and this time, instead of typing node.js, we'll type nodemon app.js. This automatically started via the nodemon. So as you can see, it says listening. Now what I want to really show you is what nodemon can do, so we'll go back to our visual code. We'll change this to listening at port, and we'll save that. Back in our terminal, you can see nodemon automatically restarted the server with the new code. So instead of, say, listening on startup, it says listening at port. This makes server programming a lot easier. Instead of going back to your terminal and typing the restart code every single time, nodemon pretty much does that for you. In nodemon, we can actually configure which files to look at and which files to not look at whenever we're changing code. Because you don't want it to restart every time you make any change to any file at all. That might create problems in a real-world environment. So we're going to go back to Visual Code here. Let's create a new module. For now, we'll call that logger.js. All it has to do is a function logging, and inside that, we'll console.log. I'm up and ready. Now let's export this. So module.exports.logging is equal to logging. Now back in outdoor.js, let's first bring in our module const. Logger is equal to require type ./logger. Now notice that it's our own module, so we have to provide a relative path, whereas Node won't recognize it. Next, what I want to do is, instead of this console log, I just want to change it to logger.logging. Now, back in our terminal, you can see that when we save the code, what it does is, instead of that first console log that we used to do it, it goes to the logger, and it runs the function inside and logs out up here. So back in Visual Code, now if we make changes to this code, we change it to just and up, and we save it, the changes are reflected in our terminal. So it restarted the server even on that change. But what if we don't want it to restart if our logger file changes? So for that, the simplest way is we create a new file. And let's call this file nodemon.json. So this will be our nodemon consideration file. Inside nodemon.json, we create our own configuration. We'll set both to true. Now what this does is it just gives us a few more details of what our package is really doing. Next we'll set an ignore key, and we'll pass an array inside that for now. we're just passing /logger.js. Now, you must have noticed that we passed the relative path, so you have to pass the exact path of whatever file you want to ignore. There are some other configurations you can try. For example, you could, for instance, have set this to *.js. This would have pretty much ignored every .js file in our package. You can use this to your own liking, according to what suits you and your program. For now, let's set this back to logger.js, and it's safe. Now back in our terminal, we're going to restart node1 app.js. So, as you can see, it reads ignoring logger.js. So now if we were to make any changes to logger.js, they wouldn't be reflected in our application. So if we go back to our code, and we change this to listening back in our terminal, you won't see a change because nodemon is ignoring that file. So now we know what nodemon does, how to set it up, how to make it ignore files, and there's a few more commands. For instance, you could set delays, and you can pretty much do all of that in its configuration file. We'll go through more of these options if you need them as we progress through the course. That's all for this video. In the next video, we'll summarize this section before we move on to the next. Thank you for watching this video. Welcome back. So in this section we went over the node module system in some detail. We talked about core modules, NPM modules, and learned to create our own. We also became familiar with nodemon to make programming with Node less of a hassle for us, and how to configure it according to what we want in that specific application. In the next section we'll start to learn how to build our own real-time web app using sockets. But before that, as a challenge, try building a Node application with 2 modules. The first module will concatenate 2 strings. The second module takes 2 arguments as strings. Using the first module, it will concatenate both of them and then console log them and just call the second module in your app.js using 2 strings. The more you practice, the more familiar you'll get with how to handle codes in Node and how to go around the module system and understand it a little better. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Welcome back. In this section we're going to start working on our real-time messaging app with Node. In this application we'll add functionalities such as timestamps and geolocation to send messages with your location. We'll also learn and implement how to track and add users and displaying active users. We'll use socket IO rooms to implement some of this functionality, and we'll be building this app from scratch, and progress with more functionality being added in each coming section. I would suggest coding along with me so that you fully understand how it all works and comes together. Thank you for watching this video. Welcome back. In this section we're going to set up the basic building blocks for real-time web applications with sockets. We'll learn how to set up a server, we'll learn about WebSockets, and how Socket IO gives us that functionality. And we will install and configure Socket IO into our base project so that we can get started with working in it in the next section. I'll see you in the next video where we're going to start setting up our server. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you soon. Welcome back. In this video we will learn how to set up our own Node.js web server. So inside which record to start off by importing the HTTP node core module, which provides us with the functionality of setting up servers. So we can create a constant HTTP cert equal to require HTTP. Now we're going to use this to create our server, and it's really simple. So type const server SQL to http.createServer. Inside that we can pass a function as a parameter. This function takes 2 arguments. The first argument is request, and the second one is response. We can use these 2 arguments, objects, to send responses, and basically we'll use it to control our server. We'll see that functionality later on. Inside, we can type the functionality of our server, so every time someone requests something from a server, it'll call this function. We'll leave that empty for now. And that's just set up our server. To listen on a port, we'll type server guard listen. We passed port 3004. Now, and the second argument that the listen function takes is basically a function. It can run if there's an error. So if it takes an argument error, and inside that basically certological for if there is an error, then console.log. There's an error. Or else we can just console.log listening on port 3000. Let's make this a little more generic. And we'll define a variable for equal to 3000. That's better. With that, we've basically set up our server, and it's listening at port 3000 for any requests. But our server isn't actually doing anything at the moment because our server hasn't been implemented. Talking about this function right here. So our server isn't actually doing anything whenever it gets a request. So in here, let's type this. Dot, right? Alright, we'll press either. So we'll also type s.end to end our response. Every time a client tries to connect to our server will respond to it by saying hi there. So let's start our server up. We'll open our terminal. We'll go to nodemon. And the name of our file was webserver.js. So webserver.js. We can see our message listening at port 3000. This is from when we set out to listen. There wasn't an error, so at console log, listening at port 3000. Now let's try going to our browser. In our browser, let's open localhost 3000. And as you can see, our server is responding with a hi there. So with that, we've basically set up a very simple server, and we've tested it by trying to connect to it at that port using our browser as a client. That's all for this video. You can add further functionality to that by playing around with it to understand things and servers a little better before we get started with our project properly. In the next video, we'll learn about WebSockets delts. See you then. Thank you for watching this video. Welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about WebSockets. So, what are WebSockets? Put simply, they are a method of communication between a client and server. The data inside the sockets can go both ways, hence it's bidirectional. So the client can send data to a server, and the server can send data to a client. And as these WebSockets are always open, their data flow is in real time, which is something we require for a project to allow us to continuously send data between clients and servers. To clarify this part, I want you to picture this scenario, where we will have a server and multiple clients connected to it. So if there was a growth chart between all these clients, and this one client were to send a message, it should instantly update on all the clients' browsers. That's what we can achieve using WebSockets, as WebSockets are always open. So for instance, when this client sends a message to the server will instantly update it to all these clients in real time. So there's our basic introduction to WebSockets. It's a fairly simple concept. I'll see you in the next video where we'll talk about Socket.io, the package we'll use for our WebSockets. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you soon. Welcome back. In this video we're going to go over Socket.io. and how to install and configure it for our project. I have the socket.io documentation opened up in front of me at socket.io/docs, and here it says work.socket.io. So socket.io is a library that enables real-time bidirectional events based on communication between browser and the server. So we just went over WebSockets in the last video. This is pretty much what WebSockets are. So socket.io gives us the functionality of WebSockets. It's a bidirectional flow of information, and it enables real-time flows of information. That's exactly what we're going to achieve in our messaging application. So the communication being event-based in order to stand out a little better when we dive deeper into how to use socket.io for functionality. Before we set up socket.io, what I want you to do is go into the command prompt. Here I'm in the directory where I make all my projects for this tutorial. So let's make that a tree. We'll call it Messenger app. You can call it whatever you want, but I'm going to stick to that. With that, we've created our directory for our application. I just want to set up our new directory and our package basically for the application so that we can just get started with the functionality in the next videos. Next, let's go into that directory Messenger app. Now, what I want you to do is type npm in it. What that basically does is create a package.json file which we'll use to configure all the packages that we'll be including in this project. So for instance, remember how we created a node.json file? We can basically implement that functionality inside this one package.json file now, and we can do it for all the packages that we'll use. So package name, Messenger app, and fine with that version description, real-time web application. You can just leave this empty though. Multi-point index.js. I'm going to change the URL to server purchase. There's the command, git repository keywords. Just leave the rest of that empty. And yes. So with that, let's type code period to open it up in Visual Code. Inside Visual Code, we can see that we have a directory called Messenger app. And there's a package.json file that has all the information we were just asked inside the terminal. So basically skip this part of entering all this information and just get through with it instantly. You can also type --y at the end to initialize it with default values. So back and record. What I want you to do next is create our files. We're going to need a server.cs. For the start, we're going to have client scripts, script.js. For now, let's create these files. And as we start the implementation, you'll understand why I'm separating both of these files. Okay, with our package setup, let's get back to socket.io. In this video, we'll only be configuring it and installing it in this package. And in the next section, we'll start using it to communicate between our client and our server. So for now, let's just continue with setting up our package. Let's go back to the terminal and start installing packages we'll need. So there's these other packages that we should install first, called http and pm install. And I want to install it globally HTTP server. This package I'm only going to use it to host my client's application, so that we can completely separate the logic of our client and our host through a very simple method. And we'll basically host our HTTP file on the server. And we're not going to go into too much detail, just to create a client script separately to better understand how the Node backend basically works. So let's install that. With that done, let's install socket.io. And I want to make this dependency, so dash as to what this does is it sets it up as a dependency in our project. And let's hit enter. And then let's go back to Visual Code. and take a look at our package.json file. So as you can see, we now have socket.io in our dependencies. With that, we've basically set up our basic package for our application, and we've configured socket.io inside our package. We'll go over in more detail in the coming sections when we start implementing outro functionality. So for now, that's all, and I would suggest going through the socket.io documentation just to understand it a little better. That's all for this video. In the next video, we'll just summarize this section before we move on to the next section, in which we start our actual implementation. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you soon. Welcome back. In this video, we're going to summarize this section before we move on to the next one. In this section, we learn how to set up our own web server. We set up a really basic web server that listened at a port. And we tested it by trying to connect to that port using our browser, and we got a response. After that, we talked about WebSockets, we discussed them in detail, and we went on in the next video to discuss Socket.io. We configured it and set it up for a package. We created our entire package with the basic files that we'll be needing. That's pretty much what we've achieved in this section. In the next section, we're going to start client-server communication, and we're really going to get into implementing our WebSockets, our server, our client-side, using Socket.io. As the challenge for this section, I want you to first go through the Socket.io documentation before we start the next section, so that you have a deeper understanding of how it works and what functionality it offers. Other than that, you should implement a module called server.js. Make a server that listens at port 5500. The module will take two numbers as arguments. It adds these numbers and sends the following as a response to any browser or client connecting at that port. The format is given in the slides. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next section.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching this course. If you want to watch the rest of the course, the link is down below. Not only will you get the access to this course, but you'll get access to a lot of other courses in a huge bundle, and it's on sale today. So buy before the sale ends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.